having such amazing viewers like you. Tell us, which part of the world are you watching from today? Morning coffee or evening wind down? Share below. Now let's dive into today's story. The blue light of the laptop screen cast harsh shadows across Michael Walters' face as he stared at the banking portal. His finger hovered over the transfer button, the cursor blinking steadily like a metronome, counting down to a decision he couldn't take back. $190,000, nearly $200,000 that would vanish with a single click. Outside his home office window, the October wind rattled fallen leaves against the glass. It was well past midnight, but sleep wasn't an option. Not with his father-in-law's life potentially hanging in the balance. The house creaked and soft footsteps approached. Michael minimized the window just as Tanya appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her silk robe, her dark hair tumbling over her shoulders. Even after 5 years of marriage, the sight of her still made his heart skip a beat. "You're still up?" she asked, her voice thick with carefully crafted concern. She padded across the room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. "Baby, you need to rest. You've been stressing about this for days." Michael leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. "I'm just going over the numbers again. With the new contracts." "The contracts will be fine," Tanya interrupted, moving behind him to massage his shoulders. Her touch was gentle but insistent. "You're brilliant at what you do. The company's never been stronger." Her fingers worked at a knot in his neck, and Michael felt some of the tension begin to dissolve. "That's exactly why this timing is so crucial. We got material costs to cover, payroll to meet, and my father has men threatening to break more than just his fingers." Tanya's voice cracked perfectly, a practice tremor that she'd been perfecting for weeks. She moved around to perch on the edge of his desk, forcing him to look at her. In the dim light, her eyes glistened with tears. "I know it's a lot to ask, Michael, but he's family. He's Marcus's grandfather." As if on cue, a faint cry echoed from down the hall, their 2-year-old son stirring in his sleep. Tanya glanced toward the sound, her manipulation subtle but effective. "I'll check on him," she whispered, squeezing Michael's hand before gliding out of the room. Left alone, Michael reopened the banking window. The numbers stared back at him, accusing. His phone buzzed, a text from George Peterson, his business partner of 10 years. "Don't do it," the message read. "Something's not right. Call me?" Michael's thumb hovered over the call button, but another cry from Marcus's room made him hesitate. With a deep breath, he dialed George instead. "Tell me you haven't transferred the money yet," George answered without preamble, his voice gruff with concern. "I'm about to." "George, you should see James's face. They worked him over good." "That's what doesn't track," George cut in. "Since when do loan sharks target retired accountants? And Asian triads? In our city? Come on, Mike." Michael glanced toward the hallway, lowering his voice. He got in over his head at some underground casino in Chinatown. "Convenient explanation, isn't it?" George's skepticism crackled through the phone. "And these supposedly dangerous gangsters are willing to wait patiently while he gets the money together? That's not how these things work, and you know it. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you take a step back and think." James Ballard shows up with bruises and a wild story about gambling debts right after we land the biggest contracts in company history? That timing doesn't set off any alarms for you? Before Michael could respond, he heard Tanya's footsteps returning. "I've got to go," he whispered. "Marcus is up." "Mike, wait." He ended the call just as Tanya appeared, carrying their sleepy-eyed son. Marcus's dark curls were mussed from sleep, his cheeks flushed as he clutched his favorite stuffed elephant. "Someone wanted to say good night to Daddy," Tanya said softly, depositing Marcus in Michael's lap. The boy snuggled against his chest, warm and trusting. Michael breathed in the sweet baby shampoo smell of his hair, feeling his resolve crumble. "Duh," Marcus mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Tanya stood behind them, her hand resting on Michael's shoulder. The perfect picture of family unity. "He's so lucky to have you," she murmured. "We both are. You always take care of us." Michael thought of James's bruised face at Sunday dinner, the way his hands shook as he tried to hold his fork, the way Marcus had run to hug his grandfather, oblivious to the older man's wince of pain. "Okay," he said finally, shifting Marcus carefully as he reached for the mouse. "I'll do it." Tanya's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on his shoulder as he clicked the transfer button. "Thank you, baby. Daddy will be so relieved." As the confirmation screen appeared, Michael caught a glimpse of Tanya's reflection in the window. For just a moment, the mask of loving concern slipped, replaced by something cold and triumphant. But when he turned to look at her directly, she was all warmth and gratitude again. "Let me put him back to bed," she said, lifting Marcus from his lap. "Then maybe we can both get some sleep." Michael nodded, watching them go. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. Another text from George. "Whatever you do, don't transfer that money. I found something you need to see." But it was too late. The funds were gone, transferred to an account he would later discover had been emptied within minutes of receiving the money. The first domino had fallen, setting in motion a chain of events that would shatter everything he thought he knew about family, loyalty, and trust. James Ballard sat in his private office suite, watching the transaction notification appear on his phone with a satisfaction that would have shocked his son-in-law. The bruises on his face, carefully applied by a theatrical makeup artist, itched slightly under the harsh fluorescent lights. "It's done," he announced to the room's other occupants. Michael transferred the full amount. Across the mahogany desk, Chin Wei nodded approvingly. The Chinese businessman's expression remained impassive, but his dark eyes glittered with interest. "Your daughter has performed admirably, Mr. Ballard." The husband suspected nothing. "Tanya knows how to handle him." James allowed himself a small smile, remembering his daughter's performance at Sunday dinner. The trembling hands as she served dessert, the perfectly timed tears when Michael went to comfort her. She's always been gifted that way. Even as a child, she could convince anyone of anything. And the cousin? Chun Wei's associate, Lu Ming, spoke up from his position by the window. "He remains useful?" James swiveled his chair to face the wall of monitors behind his desk, each displaying financial data from different businesses in his growing network. "Alvin has exceeded expectations. His position in Michael's company gives us unprecedented access. Speaking of which," he pressed an intercom button. "Send them in." The office door opened, admitting Tanya and Alvin Gross. They entered separately, maintaining a professional distance that would have fooled any casual observer. But James noticed the way their eyes met briefly, the slight flush in his daughter's cheeks. "Congratulations are in order," Chin Wei said, rising to pour drinks from the crystal decanter on the credenza. "Phase 1 is complete." Tanya accepted her glass with a graceful nod. Michael's always been easy to manipulate. He's so desperate to be the hero, the good husband, the perfect father. Her lip curled slightly. "It's pathetic, really? Don't underestimate him," Alvin warned, remaining standing as he sipped his bourbon. At 28, he was 7 years younger than Michael, but ambition had aged him. He's trusting, not stupid. And his partner, George Peterson, is already asking questions. "Questions are not evidence," Lu Ming dismissed. "And soon it won't matter. How long before you can begin implementing the new billing system?" Alvin pulled out his tablet, scrolling through documents he'd copied from Michael's office. "The company just landed 3 major contracts. Perfect timing to restructure our accounting procedures. Michael's too busy with project management to notice if we adjust some numbers here and there. Assuming you can keep him distracted." Chin Wei looked pointedly at Tanya. She laughed, a musical sound entirely devoid of warmth. "Trust me, I know exactly how to handle my husband. Besides, he's hardly ever home these days. All those job sites to visit, contracts to oversee." She moved closer to Alvin, dropping any pretense of distance. "Leaves me plenty of time for other activities." James watched the interaction with clinical detachment. He'd long ago stopped seeing Tanya as his little girl. She was a weapon now, precision-crafted and deadly effective. "Speaking of activities, how's my grandson?" "Marcus is fine," Tanya said dismissively. "Michael dotes on him, of course. Never suspects a thing." She exchanged a knowing look with Alvin that made the younger man shift uncomfortably. "The boy could be useful leverage if things go wrong," Lu Ming suggested. "Nothing will go wrong," James insisted, standing to face the wall of monitors. "Michael's company is perfect for our needs. Clean reputation, solid contracts, excellent cash flow. Within 6 months, we'll be able to move 10 times the amount we're handling now through their accounts. And when he eventually notices the discrepancies? Chunwei asked. James turned back to the room, his expression hardening. By then, it will be too late. The paper trail will lead directly to him. A trusted businessman fallen from grace, embezzling from his own company to feed a gambling addiction. He smiled coldly. A tragic story, really? These things happen all the time. And what about George Peterson? Alvin asked. He's not as easily fooled as Michael. Leave George to me, Tanya interjected. I've been laying groundwork there too. A few strategic comments about erratic behavior, drinking at lunch, mysterious absences. Plant enough seeds of doubt, and no one will believe him if he raises concerns. The meeting continued well into the night, plans being refined, contingencies discussed. None of them noticed the cleaning lady who lingered slightly too long outside the door, or the way she carefully positioned her cart to capture their conversation on a hidden device. Later, in her small apartment across town, Margie Manning, who hadn't actually been a cleaning lady in over 20 years, would review the recording with growing concern. The ex-FBI agent had been hired by George Peterson to look into James Ballard's sudden gambling problem. But what she'd uncovered went far deeper than anyone suspected. Oh, Michael, she muttered, making notes in her file. You have no idea what kind of sharks you're swimming with. The dining room of the exclusive Highland Club dripped old money from every crystal chandelier and mahogany panel. It was the kind of place where deals were made over perfectly cooked steaks, where fortunes changed hands between coffee and dessert. Tonight, it would serve as the stage for a carefully orchestrated destruction. Michael sat at the head of the long table, trying to focus on the celebration at hand. The company had just secured its largest contract yet, a $15 million development project that would put them in a whole new league. Around him, family and close associates chatted and laughed, wine flowing freely as the evening wore on. You've outdone yourself, son. James Ballard raised his glass in a toast. The bruises on his face now faded to a sickly yellow. I always knew you had potential. From her seat beside Michael, Tanya beamed with practiced pride. She'd been drinking steadily all evening, but her eyes remained sharp, calculating. We should all thank Michael, she agreed, her voice carrying just enough edge to make several guests glance up. He's so good at taking care of things. Across the table, Alvin shifted in his seat, avoiding eye contact. He'd been unusually quiet throughout dinner, responding to questions about the new contract with clipped, professional answers. To most observers, he appeared appropriately deferential to his older cousin's success. Speaking of taking care of things, James continued smoothly. I can't thank you enough for your help with my recent difficulties. Those people were quite satisfied with the arrangement. Michael nodded uncomfortably, still troubled by the massive transfer he'd made 3 weeks ago. He'd barely slept since, worried about cash flow with the new project starting up. I'm just glad it's resolved, he said diplomatically. Oh, it's resolved all right, Tanya murmured into her wine glass. Something in her tone made Michael turn to look at her more closely. The evening had started well enough. They'd arrived early, Tanya stunning in a deep red dress that drew admiring glances from other diners. Marcus had been left with a sitter, giving them a rare night out as adults. But as the wine flowed and the courses progressed, something had shifted in his wife's demeanor. Now, watching her drain her fourth? Or was it fifth? Glass of wine, Michael noticed details he'd been too preoccupied to see before. The way she leaned slightly toward Alvin when she laughed. The brief touches as they passed dishes. The loaded glances that spoke of shared secrets. You know what I love about you, Michael? Tanya's voice cut through his observations, loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. You're so trusting, so eager to help family. She emphasized the last word with a bitter laugh that raised alarm bells in Michael's mind. Tanya, James said sharply, perhaps you've had enough wine. She waved off his concern, her smile taking on a cruel edge. Oh, but we're celebrating, Daddy. Michael's big success. Shouldn't we tell him exactly how successful he's been? This isn't the time, Alvin muttered, but Tanya was beyond caring. When is the time? She demanded, pushing back from the table. When he transfers more money? When he signs more contracts? How long are we supposed to keep pretending? Michael felt the room shift around him, as if the floor had suddenly tilted. Pretending what? Exactly? Tanya turned to him, and the mask she'd worn for 5 years finally cracked completely. There was no trace of the loving wife now, only cold amusement and something close to contempt. "You're such a fool," she laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Did you really think my father, who managed hedge funds for 20 years, got himself into trouble with loan sharks? That he needed your help to pay off gambling debts?" "Tanya, that's enough," James snapped, but she ignored him. "And while you were playing the noble husband, writing checks to save poor daddy from the big bad gangsters, I was having the time of my life." She gestured toward Alvin, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his expensive suit. "Your cousin here knows how to show a woman a good time. Don't you, darling?" The silence that fell over the table was absolute. Michael stared at his wife, then at his cousin, watching 5 years of marriage collapse like a house of cards. "How long?" he managed to ask, his voice surprisingly steady. "Long enough." Tanya's smile was vicious now. "Long enough to know that Alvin's better than you in every way that matters. At least he knows how to satisfy me. We should take this somewhere private." James attempted to intervene, aware of the attention they were drawing from other diners. "Private?" Tanya laughed again, rising unsteadily to her feet. "Like all those private afternoons while Michael was visiting job sites? All those private moments when we were making his precious Marcus?" The words hit Michael like physical blows. "What are you saying?" "Oh, come on, Michael. Look at him. Look at your son. Those dark curls, that olive skin. Did you really think he got those features from my side of the family?" She turned to Alvin, who sat frozen in his chair. Tell him who Marcus's real father is." The room spun slowly around Michael as the truth crashed over him in waves. The elegant dining room, with its crystal and candlelight, seemed to blur at the edges. Every laugh, every touch, every convenient business trip, it all took on new meaning with brutal clarity. "Marcus's," he started, but couldn't finish the sentence. "Alvin's," Tanya confirmed with cruel satisfaction. "Your cousin's been more than just your junior partner, darling. While you were busy building your precious company, he was building a real family with me. We're taking Marcus to his real family now." Alvin finally found his voice, though he still couldn't meet Michael's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he said quietly. "We were going to tell you." "When?" Michael's question cut through the air like a blade. "After the new contracts? After you helped yourself to my company too?" James Ballard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "That's quite enough. Tanya, you're making a scene?" "A scene?" She laughed, the sound echoing off the wood-paneled walls. "Oh, Daddy, I'm just getting started. Should I tell him about the money? About where his precious $190,000 really went?" Several other diners were openly staring now. A waiter hovered uncertainly at the edge of their table, unsure whether to intervene. "Your father's gambling debts," Michael said slowly, the pieces falling into place. The bruises, the threatening phone calls, it was all a lie. Every word, Tanya confirmed, swirling the wine in her glass. "Daddy hasn't touched a deck of cards in his life. But you were so eager to play the hero, to prove what a good son-in-law you were." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "Want to know what we did with the money while you were losing sleep over saving the family? That's enough." James's voice cracked like a whip. "Tanya Carr. Now, Alvin, take her home." But Tanya wasn't finished. She stood, swaying slightly, and reached for her purse. "We're not going home. Not to that house. Not to your perfect little life. Marcus deserves to be with his real father, with people who aren't living a lie. You can't just take him." Michael started to rise, but Alvin stepped between them. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," his cousin said, finally meeting his gaze. "He's my son. The DNA will prove it. You had to have suspected. Everyone else did." The last words hit Michael like a physical blow. Everyone else did? How many people had known? How many had watched him raise another man's child, seen him play the fool? "I trusted you," Michael said quietly, looking at each of them in turn. "All of you? That was your first mistake." Tanya smirked, gathering her things. "Family means nothing in business, darling. Isn't that right, Daddy?" James grabbed her arm, his facade of concern cracking to reveal irritation underneath. I said that's enough. The sitter will bring Marcus to my house. We're leaving. Now. As they moved toward the exit, Tanya turned back one last time. Don't worry about Marcus. He'll be fine with his real family. Better than fine. And you? You can go back to what you're good at, being everyone's favorite fool. Michael sat alone at the ruined dinner table, surrounded by half-empty wine glasses and abandoned dessert plates. The celebratory evening had turned into something else entirely. The end of his marriage, his family, and everything he thought he knew about the people he'd trusted most. A waiter approached cautiously. Sir, would you like me to clear the table? No, Michael said, his voice distant. Bring me a scotch. Neat. And the check. As he waited, he pulled out his phone and saw the missed calls from George. His partner had been right all along. The stories hadn't added up. But he'd ignored the warnings, chosen trust over suspicion, family over facts. The scotch arrived, amber liquid catching the candlelight. Michael stared into the glass, seeing reflections of the past 5 years. Every lie, every betrayal, every calculated move that had led to this moment. They played him for a fool, used his own decent nature against him. But as he sat there, processing the cruel truth of his situation, something else began to stir beneath the shock and hurt. A cold, calculating anger that would soon reshape everyone's carefully laid plans. The morning after the disastrous dinner at the Highland Club, Michael sat in a coffee shop 3 towns over, far from any familiar faces. His suit was wrinkled from sleeping in his car, his phone turned off to avoid the barrage of messages he knew would be waiting. The events of the previous night played on endless loop in his mind. Tanya's cruel laughter, Alvin's guilty silence, James's calculated control of the situation. The bell above the door chimed, and a woman in her 50s entered, scanning the nearly empty cafe before spotting him. Margie Manning moved with the casual grace of someone used to being overlooked, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, her clothes expensive but forgettable. Nothing about her suggested ex-FBI agent, which was precisely the point. You look like hell, she said by way of greeting, sliding into the booth across from him. Though I suppose finding out your wife's been playing you would do that to anyone. Michael blinked in surprise. How did you know about last night? Margie signaled the waitress for coffee. I've been watching your family for weeks. George Peterson hired me after your father-in-law's mysterious gambling debt surfaced. Something about Asian triads targeting a retired accountant set off his alarm bells. The waitress arrived with Margie's coffee, and they waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. Why didn't George tell me? Would you have believed him? Margie's eyes were kind but direct. From what I've observed, you're a trusting man, Mr. Walters. It's an admirable quality, but it can be weaponized by the wrong people. Michael stared into his cold coffee. They used Marcus, my own son, except he's not even mine. Let's focus on what we know for certain. Margie pulled out a slim tablet. Your father-in-law's gambling debts were fabricated. The bruises? Professional theatrical makeup. I got photos of him visiting a special effects studio in Chinatown the day before he showed up beaten at your house. She turned the tablet to show Michael surveillance photos of James entering a nondescript building, then leaving hours later. The next photo showed him testing the fake bruises in his car mirror. The loan sharks who called your office? Burner phones, all purchased with cash by one of James's employees. The threatening voicemails were recorded at a studio in the same building as his investment firm. Investment firm? Michael frowned. He's supposed to be retired. Margie's expression turned grim. That's where this gets interesting. James Ballard hasn't retired from anything. He's been busy building something much bigger than his old accounting practice. She swiped to another photo, this one showing James meeting with well-dressed Asian businessmen at an upscale restaurant. These men aren't triads. They're Chinese real estate investors, and they're using your father-in-law to move money through legitimate businesses. Money laundering, Michael said quietly, the pieces clicking into place. They needed my company's reputation. Exactly. Your construction company is perfect, established history, solid contracts, legitimate reason to handle large sums of cash. The $190,000 you transferred? It wasn't for gambling debts. It was a test run, proving you could be manipulated into moving money without asking too many questions. Michael felt sick. And Tanya? Alvin? Your wife's been working with her father for years. The marriage itself might have been part of the plan, a way to get close to someone with a clean business reputation. Margie hesitated before continuing. The affair with your cousin, that appears to have started about 3 years ago, shortly after he joined your company. Around the time Marcus was conceived, Michael's voice was hollow. Margie reached across the table to stop him from crushing his paper coffee cup. There's more. Your cousin's role goes beyond the affair. He's been systematically documenting your business practices, helping them understand how to manipulate your company's finances without raising red flags. How do you know all this? A slight smile crossed Margie's face. Let's just say I'm very good at being invisible. You'd be amazed what people discuss when they think no one's listening. She pulled out a small recorder. Would you like to hear what your father-in-law and his partners talk about in their private meetings? Michael nodded, and Margie pressed play. James Ballard's voice emerged, discussing profit margins and shell companies with his Chinese partners. Then Tanya's voice, calculating and cold. Nothing like the loving wife she pretended to be. Michael doesn't pay attention to the details. He trusts me to handle the books. We can easily move 10 times this amount through the accounts. Stop, Michael said abruptly. I've heard enough. Margie turned off the recording. What do you want to do with this information? I want to destroy them, Michael said quietly. Not just expose them, destroy everything they've built. But I need proof. Hard evidence that will stand up in court. That's beyond my expertise, Margie admitted. You'll need someone who understands construction finance, who can trace the money trails and document the fraud. Do you know someone? I might. There's a forensic accountant who specializes in construction fraud. Ramiro Roth. He's not cheap, but he's the best at what he does. Money's not an issue. Michael's jaw set in determination. Set up a meeting. Margie studied him carefully. You understand this won't be quick or easy. We'll need to move carefully, gather evidence without tipping them off. They think you're broken, devastated by your wife's revelation. That gives us an advantage. Use it. I can play the part, Michael assured her. They've had 5 years to perfect their performance. Now it's my turn. Good. Margie gathered her things. One more thing, don't try to contact Marcus. I know it's hard, but any attempt to see him could alert them that you're not as destroyed as they think. Michael's hands clenched under the table. He's just a child. He doesn't deserve to be caught in this. No, he doesn't. But right now, the best way to protect him is to focus on exposing the truth. Are you ready for that? Michael thought of every lie, every manipulation, every moment of false affection. Yes, he said firmly. Whatever it takes. As Margie left the coffee shop, Michael remained in the booth, staring at his reflection in the window. The trusting husband was gone, replaced by something harder, more focused. They taught him the true meaning of family. Now it was time to return the lesson. The office of Ramiro Roth resembled a crime scene more than an accounting firm. Every wall was covered in whiteboards filled with financial flowcharts, sticky notes, creating constellations of connections between shell companies and bank accounts. The forensic accountant himself sat surrounded by monitors, his fingers flying over multiple keyboards as he traced the elaborate web of financial deception. Brilliant, he muttered, more to himself than to Michael and Margie. Absolutely brilliant and utterly corrupt. Your father-in-law is either a financial genius or criminally insane. Possibly both. 3 weeks had passed since the initial meeting with Margie. Michael had maintained his devastated facade, showing up to work sporadically, appearing disheveled and distracted. Meanwhile, Ramiro had been digging through years of financial records, unraveling the complex scheme that had been building right under Michael's nose. Show him what you found, Margie prompted, perched on the edge of a desk covered in documents. Ramiro spun in his chair, his enthusiasm for the puzzle evident despite the serious nature of their investigation. It's beautiful, in a twisted way. They've been setting this up for years, long before you even met Tanya. Your father-in-law identified promising construction companies, ones with clean reputations and growth potential. Then they'd find ways in through marriage, hiring family members, whatever worked. He pulled up a series of spreadsheets on the main monitor. See these project bids? They're all inflated, but not enough to raise immediate red flags. Materials costs marked up 15 to 20% above market rate. Subcontractors charging premium rates for basic work. But here's the clever part. They created a network of shell companies to handle the overflow. The extra money gets funneled through these fake companies, Michael realized, studying the complex flow of funds. Exactly. On paper, everything looks legitimate. You're just paying market rates for materials and labor. But the shell companies are all controlled by James and his partners. They pocket the difference, then move it through a series of transactions that make it impossible to trace. Margie leaned forward. How much are we talking about? Ramiro's expression turned grave. Conservative estimate? They've moved over $50 million through various construction companies in the past 3 years. Your company was going to be their biggest operation yet. Those 3 new contracts you just landed? They were planning to use them to clean at least twice that amount. Michael felt the weight of the numbers crushing down on him. And Alvin? What was his role in all this? Your cousin? Ramiro pulled up another series of documents. He's been quite busy. Every time you travel to job sites, he was copying documents, recording conversations, learning how your legitimate business operated. They needed to understand your processes, to mimic them convincingly. He showed them a detailed flowchart of Michael's company's standard operating procedures. This is what Alvin compiled. Every approval process, every signature requirement, every internal control. They used this information to design their fraud around your existing systems, making it harder to detect, Margie noted. Much harder. They weren't just throwing fake invoices at you. They were building a parallel system that looked exactly like your legitimate operations. If anyone investigated, the paper trail would lead back to you, not them. Michael stared at the evidence of his cousin's betrayal. How did I not see this? Because they knew exactly how to blind you, Ramiro said kindly. They used your trust, your family loyalty, against you. But now we can use their own thoroughness as a weapon. Alvin documented everything. And I do mean everything. He pulled up another file. Your cousin may be good at gathering information, but he's terrible at covering his digital tracks. I found his private cloud storage. He kept copies of everything, probably as insurance against your father-in-law. Emails, meeting notes, bank records, a complete roadmap of their operation. Can we use it as evidence? Margie asked. Better than that, Ramiro grinned. We can use it to predict their next moves. Based on these documents, I know exactly how they're planning to structure the fraud for your new contracts. Every shell company they'll use, every inflated bid they'll submit, every fake supplier they'll create. Michael absorbed this information, his mind racing with possibilities. So, we can catch them in the act? If we play it right, Ramiro cautioned. But we need to be careful. These people aren't just white-collar criminals. The amount of money involved, it attracts dangerous attention. The Chinese investors, Michael remembered. Real estate developers on paper, Ramiro confirmed. But their money comes from less legitimate sources. They're using construction projects to clean funds from other activities, drugs, illegal gambling, who knows what else. He pulled up surveillance photos similar to the ones Margie had shown, but with additional details. These men visit James's office regularly, always after hours, always through the service entrance. They're careful, professional, and very serious about protecting their investment. What about Marcus? Michael asked quietly. Is he safe with them? Ramiro and Margie exchanged glances. I've been monitoring their movements, Margie said carefully. Tanya and Alvin have moved in with James. The house is good security, and they seem protective of the boy. But, Michael pressed. But if they realize we're building a case, there's no telling how they might react. We need to move carefully, gather evidence, without showing our hand. Ramiro nodded in agreement. I need another week to document everything. Then we should talk to a lawyer, someone who understands both criminal and family law. I know someone, Margie offered. Gerard Hansen. He's handled similar cases before. Michael stood, looking at the web of evidence surrounding them. Set it up. And Ramiro? I want everything. Every transaction. Every shell company. Every fake invoice. Leave them nowhere to hide. Already on it, the accountant assured him, turning back to his monitors. They thought they were so clever, hiding their fraud in plain sight. But numbers don't lie, and these numbers are telling a very interesting story. As Michael left the office, he felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was finally emerging, one spreadsheet at a time. But the hardest part was still to come, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a clock was ticking, counting down to a decision he wasn't sure he was ready to make. The DNA results lay on Gerard Hansen's mahogany desk like a bomb waiting to detonate. The attorney studied them carefully, his expression grave as he processed the implications. Across from him, Michael sat perfectly still, his face a mask of control that had become second nature over the past weeks. The timing matches exactly, Gerard said finally, setting down the report. The dates correlate perfectly with your business trips to the Denver project. When you were overseeing the new site, when Alvin had free access to my home, Michael finished. To my wife, to everything I thought was mine, the office was quiet save for the soft ticking of an antique clock, its steady rhythm marking time in a world that had lost all sense of normalcy. Through the window, the city skyline glittered in the early evening light, oblivious to the personal devastations being discussed in corner offices and private rooms. We have options, Gerard began carefully, pulling out a legal pad. The DNA results alone don't negate your parental rights. You've been Marcus's father in every way that matters for 2 years. There's precedent for maintaining custody despite biological parentage, especially given the circumstances of conception. Michael watched a pair of birds whirl past the window, free and unconstrained. Tell me everything. All the options, all the consequences. Gerard leaned back, steepling his fingers. Option 1. We fight for custody. You've been the primary provider. You have a stable home, successful business. We can argue that the deception itself demonstrates their unfitness as parents. But, he paused, choosing his words carefully. But it would be messy. Very messy. The DNA results, your work schedule, the ongoing criminal investigation. They'd use everything against you. Custody battles are ugly enough without adding money laundering and federal investigations to the mix. Michael nodded slowly. And Marcus? What would it do to him? He's young, but not too young to be affected by a prolonged legal battle. There would be evaluations, interviews with court-appointed specialists. Every aspect of his life would be scrutinized. What's option 2? Gerard pulled out another file. We focus on destroying their operation and securing Marcus's future through other means. The evidence Ramiro uncovered is damning. With proper coordination with federal authorities, we could dismantle their entire network. James, Tanya, Alvin, they'd all face significant prison time. And Marcus ends up with no parents at all? Michael's voice cracked slightly. Not necessarily. We can establish trusts, set up guardianship arrangements. Make sure he's provided for even if his biological parents are incarcerated. Gerard's expression softened. Sometimes the best way to protect someone isn't by keeping them close, but by ensuring their future from a distance. Michael stood, moving to the window. Below, people hurried along the sidewalks, heading home to their families, their normal lives. He calls me Daddy, he said quietly. Every morning, every night. He doesn't know any different. Which is why this decision is so crucial, Gerard replied. Whatever you choose will shape his entire future. Show me what it looks like, both paths. Gerard pulled out more documents, laying them side by side. The custody battle. Months, possibly years of legal proceedings. Even if we win, Marcus grows up in an atmosphere of conflict. Joint custody means ongoing interaction with people who betrayed you. Sole custody means explaining to him why he can't see his mother or biological father. He gestured to the other set of papers. The alternative, we work with federal prosecutors, build an airtight case. Marcus stays with his biological parents for now, but we set up ironclad financial protection for his future. Education, healthcare, trust funds that can't be touched by anyone involved in the fraud. And Tanya? Alvin? What happens to them? Based on the evidence Ramiro uncovered, Gerard shuffled through more papers. The money laundering charges alone carry substantial sentences. Add conspiracy, wire fraud, bank fraud. They're looking at serious prison time. But they might cut deals, turn on James and the Chinese investors in exchange for leniency. Michael returned to his seat, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Marcus loves them. Whatever else they are, whatever they've done. He loves his mother. And Alvin. He swallowed hard. Alvin is his real father. Biologically, Gerard corrected. Biology isn't everything. The question is, what serves Marcus's best interests in the long term? If I fight for custody, I keep him in my life, but I risk dragging him through years of legal battles. If I let him go, Michael's voice trailed off. If you let him go, you can focus on dismantling the criminal enterprise that would otherwise shadow his future, Gerard finished gently. Sometimes the most parental thing we can do is step back. Michael stood abruptly, pacing the office. Show me the trust documents. If we go that route, I want an ironclad. Nothing they can touch. Nothing they can manipulate. Gerard pulled out another file. I've drafted preliminary papers. The trust would be managed by an independent trustee, someone with no connection to either family. It would cover education through graduate school if he chooses, healthcare, a housing allowance when he's older. We can even set up periodic payments for basic needs that can't be accessed by his parents. And the letter? Michael asked quietly. We can arrange for him to receive an explanation when he's 18. Not to hurt him, but to help him understand. The truth about his heritage, about the choices made, about why you did what you did. Michael stared at the documents spread across the desk. DNA results, trust papers, criminal evidence. Each page represented a piece of his shattered life. A decision point that would reshape not just his future, but Marcus's as well. What would you do? He asked finally. If it were your child? Gerard was quiet for a long moment. I'd ask myself one question. What action gives him the best chance at a healthy, stable future? Not what satisfies my need to stay in his life. Not what punishes those who betrayed me, but what truly serves his interests. Michael picked up the DNA results, reading the cold, scientific confirmation of his deepest fears. Then he looked at the trust documents, the careful provisions for Marcus's future. Blood isn't the only way to protect a child, he said finally, echoing thoughts he'd been wrestling with for weeks. No, Gerard agreed. Sometimes love means making the hardest choice. Michael squared his shoulders, his decision crystallizing. Set up the trust. Make it absolutely secure. And he paused, steeling himself. Begin coordinating with the federal prosecutors. It's time to end this. You're sure? Gerard asked, though he was already reaching for the relevant papers. I'm sure, Michael said quietly. Marcus deserves a future free from all of this. I can't give him back his innocence, can't undo the lies he was born into. But I can make sure he has opportunities, security, a chance at something better. And you? Gerard asked carefully. What about your future? Michael stood, gathering his coat. The sun had set while they talked, leaving the city sparkling with artificial light. My future is making sure justice is served. Not for revenge, not for satisfaction, but because it's the right thing to do. As he left Gerard's office, Michael felt strangely lighter, despite the weight of his decision. The path ahead was clear now. Not easier, but clearer. He would protect Marcus the only way he could, by destroying the criminal enterprise that threatened to shadow his future, even if it meant letting him go. The elevator doors closed on the image of him, standing straight and determined, a man who had lost everything but found a purpose. The hardest choice was made. Now it was time for action. The bourbon in Michael's glass caught the light from the chandeliers overhead, amber liquid swirling as his hand trembled. A carefully practiced shake he perfected over the past 3 months. Around him, the annual Contractors Association gala continued in full swing, but he remained isolated at the bar, his tie loosened, his appearance deliberately disheveled. Mr. Walters? A concerned board member approached cautiously. Perhaps you should call it a night? Michael looked up with unfocused eyes, another practiced move. I'm fine, he slurred slightly. Just celebrating our success. That's what these things are for, right? From across the ballroom, he could feel Tanya and Alvin watching. They'd arrived together, not even bothering to hide their relationship anymore. His public decline had emboldened them, just as planned. They're buying it, Margie's voice murmured through the nearly invisible earpiece he wore. The ex-FBI agent was positioned at a corner table, disguised as a wealthy donor. Tanya just texted James. They think you're spinning out completely. Michael knocked back the rest of his drink, actually iced tea, and gestured unsteadily for another. The performance had to be perfect. For the past 12 weeks, he'd been carefully constructing his downward spiral. Missed meetings, emotional outbursts, apparent drinking binges. Each incident meticulously documented by concerned colleagues. Each stumble witnessed by strategic observers. Your father-in-law just arrived. Ramiro's voice joined Margie's through the earpiece. The forensic accountant was monitoring surveillance feeds from a van outside. He's meeting with Chun Wei in the co-check room. Audio feeds are live. Michael pretended to fumble with his phone, knowing the movement would draw attention. Right on cue, George approached, playing his role perfectly. Mike, come on, buddy. His partner gripped his shoulder with well-rehearsed concern. Let me call you a car. Don't need a car. Michael pushed away from the bar, making sure to stumble slightly. Need another drink. Need to forget everything. He caught Tanya's satisfied smirk from across the room. She leaned closer to Alvin, whispering something that made them both laugh. The sight would have once torn him apart. Now it was just another piece of the puzzle falling into place. In the co-check room, James Ballard's conversation was being captured by high-quality microphones hidden days earlier. He's falling apart faster than we expected, James was saying. The company's vulnerable. We should accelerate the timeline. Are you certain? Chun Wei's voice was cautious. A man with nothing left to lose can be dangerous. Please, James scoffed. He's drowning himself in bourbon and self-pity. In another month, he'll either resign or the board will remove him. Either way, Alvin's positioned to take control. And the federal contracts? Already being restructured. Once Michael's out, we can move the full amount through the new shell companies. The documentation is perfect. Alvin made sure of that. Michael swayed toward the restroom, timing his exit perfectly to pass near their conversation. James and Chun Wei fell silent as he stumbled by, exchanging knowing looks. In the restroom, Michael splashed water on his face, maintaining his unsteady appearance as other guests came and went. Each movement was calculated, each sign of distress carefully calibrated to draw precisely the right kind of attention. Federal agents are getting everything, Margie confirmed through the earpiece. Keep it up. They're almost ready to move. Back in the ballroom, Michael made his way to an empty table, loosening his tie further. He pulled out his phone, making a show of staring at photos of Marcus. Pictures Tanya still sent occasionally, either out of residual guilt or continued cruelty. Right on cue, Alvin approached. His cousin's confidence had grown with each public display of Michael's apparent breakdown. You should go home, Mike. Alvin's voice dripped with false concern. You're embarrassing yourself. Michael looked up, letting real pain flash across his face. How's my son? He's not your son, Alvin replied quietly. The DNA proved that. And soon, the company won't be yours either. Save what's left of your dignity. Walk away before you're forced out. Michael's hand tightened around his glass. You took everything from me? No, Alvin leaned closer, dropping the pretense of concern. You gave it away because you were too trusting, too blind to see what was happening right in front of you. Some men are built to lead, others to follow. Guess which one you are? He walked away, rejoining Tanya at their table. Michael watched them through seemingly bleary eyes. While in the surveillance van, federal agents recorded every word, every interaction. Perfect, Margie whispered through the earpiece. The pieces are all in place. One more big display, and we can move to the final phase. Michael stood unsteadily, drawing attention once again. He moved toward the main stage where a band was playing, weaving between concerned guests. Just as he reached the steps, George intercepted him. That's enough, his partner said firmly, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I'm calling you a car. You need help, Mike. Professional help. Michael allowed himself to be led away, catching James's satisfied nod from across the room. His father-in-law pulled out his phone, undoubtedly setting the next phase of their plan in motion. But the next move wouldn't be theirs to make. In the van outside, federal agents were already preparing warrants, coordinating teams, building an operation that would bring down the entire network. Another few weeks, Margie promised as Michael was helped into a waiting car. Keep playing the part. Let them think they've won. The car pulled away from the gala, and Michael finally allowed his practice tremor to still. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a message from Gerard Hansen. Trust documents are ready. Everything's in place. Soon, very soon, the true reckoning would begin. The garden party at James Ballard's estate was a celebration of victory, or so the conspirators believed. Crystal glasses clinked as wealthy guests mingled on manicured lawns, while hidden federal agents took up positions around the perimeter. Today was meant to mark Tanya and Alvin's engagement announcement, a final twist of the knife in Michael's apparent downfall. Instead, it would serve as the stage for their undoing. All teams in position, crackled the radio in the command vehicle parked discreetly down the street. Special Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to Chin Wei, she noted wryly, coordinated final preparations with her teams. Target vehicles identified. Waiting for the signal, Michael adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror of his car, parked just around the corner. For the first time in months, he was immaculately groomed. No trace of the broken man he'd pretended to be. Remember, Margie's voice came through his earpiece. Let them make the first move. Everything needs to be on record. He stepped out of the car, straightening his jacket. The invitation to this party had come as a surprise to many guests, the estranged ex-husband attending his wife's engagement celebration. But James had insisted, wanting to witness Michael's final humiliation personally. Heads turned as he walked through the garden gates. Gone was the stumbling drunk of recent months, replaced by someone altogether more dangerous. He could see the moment of uncertainty cross James's face, the flash of concern in Tanya's eyes. What's he doing here? Alvin's voice carried across the lawn. And why isn't he, drunk? Michael supplied, his voice clear and strong. Broken? Sorry to disappoint. James moved forward smoothly, ever the gracious host. Michael, we didn't expect you to actually come. Given your recent difficulties, you mean my carefully staged breakdown? Michael smiled coldly. It was quite a performance, wasn't it? Almost as good as your gambling debt scam. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Tanya stepped forward, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. Michael, you're embarrassing yourself again. Perhaps you should. Perhaps I should what? He cut her off. Leave quietly? Let you announce your engagement to my cousin? The same cousin who helped you steal my company while I was building it into something legitimate. That's enough. James snapped, but Michael was just getting started. You know what's interesting about shell companies? He continued conversationally. They leave paper trails. Lots of them. Especially when your partners get sloppy with their documentation. Chun Wei emerged from the crowd, his usual calm demeanor showing cracks. Mr. Walters, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why? Afraid I might mention the $50 million in laundered money? Or the inflated contracts? Or maybe the real reason for all those late-night meetings in your office? James moved closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You're in over your head, Michael. Walk away while you still can. Like you walked away with my money? Like Tanya walked away with my son? Michael's voice carried across the suddenly silent garden. Did you really think I'd just break down? That I'd drink myself into oblivion while you stole everything I built? Enough! Alvin strode forward, anger overriding his caution. Security? Get him out of here. I wouldn't, Michael warned as two guards approached. Federal agents might object. As if on cue, vehicles roared to life around the perimeter. Agent Chen's voice boomed through a megaphone. Federal agents. Nobody move. The garden erupted into chaos. Guests scattered as agents in tactical gear swarmed the property. Chinwei made a break for his car, but was quickly intercepted. James reached for his phone only to find it already dead. All signals in the area had been jammed. You? Tanya stared at Michael, realization dawning. You were playing us? Everything you did is documented, he told her calmly. The money? Marked by federal agents. Your father's operation? Exposed. The evidence is overwhelming. Alvin lunged forward, but Michael didn't flinch as agents immediately restrained his cousin. You son of a... Save it for your testimony. Michael cut him off. I'm sure the prosecutors will be very interested in your detailed records of the company's operations. You really should be more careful with cloud storage. James was already in handcuffs, his usual composure shattered as Agent Chen read him his rights. Chen Wei and his associates were being loaded into separate vehicles, their carefully constructed network crumbling in real time. What about Marcus? Tanya demanded as agents approached her. You'd let your son see his mother arrested? He's not my son, Michael replied, echoing her own cruel words from months ago. The DNA proved that, remember? But keep him. He deserves to know his real father, even if that father will be rotting from federal prison for the next few years. Through his earpiece, Margie's voice was satisfied. It's done. They're all being taken into custody. The evidence is overwhelming. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. They won't be able to deal their way out of this one. Michael watched as Tanya and Alvin were led away in handcuffs, their dreams of engagement photos replaced by mugshots. The garden party's elegant decorations hung limply in the afternoon sun, champagne glasses abandoned on white-clothed tables. Gerard Hansen appeared at his side, legal documents in hand. The trust is ready. Marcus will be taken care of, no matter what happens to them. Make sure he gets the letter when he's 18, Michael said quietly. He deserves to know the truth, when he's old enough to understand. As the last police vehicles pulled away, Michael stood alone in the ruined garden party. The revenge he'd orchestrated was complete, but it brought no joy. Only a grim satisfaction that justice had been served, and a hope that somewhere in the future, a young man would read a letter and understand why his world had been turned upside down on this sunny afternoon. 5 years passed like turning pages in a book, each chapter bringing new developments, new challenges, new beginnings. Michael stood at the window of his expanded office, now occupying the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. Below, construction crews worked on yet another federal project, one of dozens his company now handled across 4 states. The photo of Marcus on his desk showed a laughing 2-year-old, frozen in time on his last birthday, before everything changed. Next to it sat a sealed envelope, waiting for the day its contents would finally be read. The trust statements are here, Joy Montgomery Walters said from the doorway, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly. Marcus's college fund is performing better than expected. Michael turned to smile at his wife, still amazed by how life could surprise you. Joy had been the federal prosecutor assigned to the case, her integrity and compassion shining through even in the darkest moments of the investigation. Their connection had grown slowly, naturally, built on shared values and understanding. He'll be starting high school soon, Michael mused, picking up the trust documents. Tanya sent pictures last month. Joy moved to stand beside him, her presence comforting and strong. Do you regret not fighting for custody? Sometimes, he admitted, but he's had stability despite everything. Tanya and Alvin served their reduced sentences, got help, built a legitimate life. The trust ensures he'll have opportunities they can't compromise. The years had brought unexpected developments. Tanya and Alvin, facing serious federal time, had cooperated fully with investigators. Their testimony had helped dismantle similar operations across 3 states. After serving minimal sentences, they'd emerged chastened, changed. Not perfect, but better than they'd been. James Ballard and Chun Wei hadn't fared as well. The scope of their operation had warranted substantial sentences. The international connections had led to additional charges, ensuring they'd spend decades behind bars. The company's annual report looks impressive, Joy noted, scanning documents on his desk. 4 states, 30 major projects, all legitimate. The betrayal taught me valuable lessons, Michael replied, unconsciously echoing words he'd written in the letter waiting for Marcus. About trust, about family, about building something that lasts. He glanced at the ultrasound photo pinned to his bulletin board, their daughter, due in less than 2 months. Joy followed his gaze, understanding in her eyes. She'll grow up knowing the value of integrity, she assured him, and the importance of doing what's right, even when it hurts. Michael nodded, thinking of all the choices that had led to this moment. The decision to let Marcus go while ensuring his future. The careful documentation of every crime. The staged descent that had drawn out his betrayers. Each step had been necessary, each sacrifice part of a larger purpose. Sometimes I wonder if he'll understand, Michael said quietly. When he reads the letter on his 18th birthday, "You told the truth with love," Joy reminded him. Not to hurt him, but to help him understand the complexities of loyalty and betrayal. That's all any father can do. The word father no longer stung like it once had. DNA might not have made Marcus his son, but the trust fund, the letter, the constant quiet protection, these were paternal acts too, different but no less real. His phone buzzed with a message from George. Another federal contract awarded, another opportunity to build something lasting. The company had emerged stronger from the crucible of betrayal, its reputation for integrity now legendary in the industry. "You know what I've learned?" Michael said, gathering Joy into his arms. "The best revenge isn't about keeping what others try to steal. It's about building something better from the ashes of betrayal." "Is that what you wrote in the letter?" she asked, leaning into him. "Part of it," he smiled. "The rest is about hope, about choices, about the different ways we can protect the people we love." Outside his window, the city stretched toward the horizon, filled with buildings his company had helped create. Each project a testament to doing things the right way, each success a quiet rebuke to those who'd chosen deceit. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of promise. Soon they'd head home to their quiet suburban house, so different from the one he'd shared with Tanya. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that integrity wasn't just a word but a way of life. "Ready to go home?" Joy asked, gathering her things. Michael took one last look at Marcus's photo, at the letter waiting to bridge past and future. "Yes," he said simply. "I'm ready." They left together, turning off lights in an office built on honest work and hard-won wisdom. In the elevator, Joy intertwined her fingers with his, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about trust rebuilt and faith restored. "Oh, I almost forgot," she said as they reached the parking garage. "The foundation board approved your proposal. We're launching the scholarship program for children affected by white-collar crime." Michael smiled, thinking of how life had a way of turning full circle. The program would help kids like Marcus, children caught in the crossfire of financial fraud and family betrayal. It wasn't atonement exactly, but another way of building something positive from painful experience. "How many students in the first year?" he asked, opening the car door for his wife. 10 full rides," Joy replied, easing herself into the seat, "plus mentoring and internship opportunities." The board was especially impressed with the ethical leadership component. As they drove home through the gathering dusk, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The betrayal had nearly destroyed him, but instead it had forced him to rebuild something stronger, not just his company, but himself. In his briefcase, next to the trust statements and company reports, sat a small ultrasound photo of their daughter. Soon she would join their world, growing up in a home where integrity wasn't just preached but practiced. She would learn early what had taken him years to understand, that true strength comes not from never being broken, but from how you choose to rebuild. The letter to Marcus would explain all of this someday. Not just the facts of what happened, but the harder truths about choices and consequences, about different kinds of love and different ways of showing it. Maybe then he would understand why his not-quite-father had chosen to protect his future from a distance rather than fight for custody in the present. As they pulled into their driveway, the porch light welcomed them home. It was so different from the mansion James had built with laundered money, or the house where Michael had lived his life of comfortable deception with Tanya. This home was built on truth, sometimes difficult, sometimes painful, but always real. Joy paused at the doorway, framed by warm light from within. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" "I always do this time of year," Michael admitted. It was close to Marcus's birthday. He would be 7 now, the same age Michael had been when he first learned about integrity from his own father. "The trust will give him choices," Joy reminded him gently. "And the letter will give him truth. That's more than many children get." Michael nodded, following her inside. On the walls, among photos of their life together, hung a single picture of a laughing 2-year-old boy. Not hidden, not denied, but acknowledged as part of the story that had led them here. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you, but about building something so much better that the pain becomes just another foundation stone. Michael had learned this lesson the hard way, but it had led him to this moment, standing in a home built on honesty, beside a woman who understood integrity's true cost, waiting for a daughter who would never have to learn these lessons through betrayal. He placed a hand on Joy's belly, feeling their daughter kick. This was his real legacy. Not the buildings his company raised, not the millions recovered from fraud, but the truth he would pass on to both children. To Marcus through the letter and trust that awaited his 18th birthday, and to his daughter through a life lived in accordance with its principles. "Come on," Joy said softly, tugging him toward the kitchen. "Let's have dinner. Tomorrow's another day to build something good." And in that simple domestic moment, Michael understood the final truth about revenge and redemption. The best revenge wasn't about keeping what others tried to steal, or even about building something better from the ashes of betrayal. It was about becoming someone who no longer needed revenge at all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.